Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Max. Now, I've been notified that some of you are watching these videos without a cup of coffee in your hand. So, go ahead, go make your coffee. It's Saturday. You got nothing planned this morning. I'll wait. Alright, cool. Well, now we can get to the good stuff. By the way, I'm drinking today Uganda Rwenzori from Roasted by Jake. Ooh, it's so good. It's so good. Highly recommended. So, I got a call from a good friend of mine, somebody who I've worked with in the past, yesterday, and he asked me, in his words, I'm going to get as close as I can, he said something along the lines of, how do you stay true to music when music is the only thing that you do? How do you continue to enjoy music when it's your career, it's your hobby, it's your entertainment? You listen to it, you play it, and you work it. And I thought it was such a good question, and I wanted to talk about this because it's something that I battle with a lot, and I think there's a couple things that are really important that can help you out if you're getting overwhelmed with music stuff. The first thing is going to sound obvious, but it's take a break. Take a really, really long break from all things music. If you're a professional musician, it means that you're doing music 100% of the time, and it's going to get stale after a while. And that's okay. That's a really important thing to understand, that it's okay to take a break from the thing that you love, even though you love it. So when I came back from school, I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I had the worst case of burnout I've had in my life. I had just been at Berklee College of Music. I came back, and for about a month I played no instruments, played no drums, and for maybe a year after that I had trouble finding the enjoyment that I once had. And I think what it boils down to a lot of times is hearing music like a musician. Think about the first song that you heard that you really liked. You just listened to it and you enjoyed it at face value, and it was great and it was amazing, and you felt something. And so that means that it's heart music versus head music, and you just enjoyed it, and that's it. And you went on to the next song, and the next song was good. When we study music and we work music, since we're so critical of ourselves all the time, it's so easy to be critical of music that we should just be enjoying. And there's two sides to this. One side is, yes, we should analyze music and learn about the chords, learn about harmony, learn about music theory, cool stuff that is in that music. And then the other side of it is, we need to know when to sit back, relax, and enjoy it like we used to. So one thing that I was talking about my friend with is practicing and doing music day to day, and he said something that he liked to practice an hour a day, and he had a max of maybe 2 hours of jamming with people. And I think it's extremely important to know where your limits are. And I told him, I said, for me, just for whatever reason, most of the time I really just don't enjoy jamming with people. I like being productive, and something about jamming with people, depending on the situation, not always, but it just doesn't light me up like other things do. I love playing gigs. I love practicing with people, which is funny. I'd rather practice with a group of people than jam with them most of the time. And maybe some of the drummers out there can comment on this too, but I think part of it is being the backbone for the jam. You kind of end up feeling like you're watching a couple of soloists go back and forth, and you're holding everything down. So anyway, that's just my experience, but it's so important to lay out boundaries for yourself. I've mentioned this in a previous video, and you can do this same thing with anything. It doesn't have to be gigs, but pick 3 criteria that if 2 of those aren't filled, you don't go to the gig, you don't take the gig, you don't go to the practice, you don't jam with those people. And for me, those 3 criteria are money, people, and exposure experience. So if 2 of those are filled, then I'll take the gig. But if 2 of them are not, or only 1 of them, then no go on the gig. I think there's so much pressure as musicians. My buddy yesterday, he said something like the musicians that he was talking to were saying, oh, you have to take every gig, you have to play everything, you have to pay your dues. You don't have to do stuff that you don't want to do. That's what it boils down to. I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. If you're not a big fan of country music, but you take country gigs just because it's to pay your dues, as the jazz cats might say, you are going to get country gigs after that. If you get hired for a country gig and you do well, which you will because you're a musician and you practice and you work hard, then you're going to keep getting country gigs after that. And that's miserable. More than that, when you're in that gig, if you're not fully enjoying it, getting the most out of it that you can, what happens is you're training yourself to not enjoy playing a gig. And that can cross over into other types of music that you do love and gigs that you wouldn't normally want to be playing. So just be careful, set up boundaries, know your limits, know when you really, really don't want to do something. Have good reasons too, Here's a good reason. I don't like your music. I don't like the music. I don't resonate with it. If you don't resonate with somebody's music, it's unfair to both of you to be playing it. They would much rather have a musician who loves the songs, and you would much rather be playing something that you love to play. So when we get to practicing, it's the same thing. If you're sitting down and you're practicing something that you don't want to play, ask yourself why. Ask yourself when you would ever use that. And if you really don't want to do it, stop. Stop practicing stuff you're not going to use. Please. It's one thing. I see some drummers on Instagram and they do these polyrhythms where it's cool for 30 seconds, but if you play that at a gig, you get fired. I see guitar players doing these videos, which are sped up, by the way. I'm going to do another video on that. There's so many videos sped up on Instagram. It's ridiculous. But they'll be shredding, or they'll be doing this thing that you practice like a million times and you're never going to use it. So think about what skills you're working on when you're practicing. If you're practicing just to show something off on Instagram, what's the point? You're never going to use that again. You just practiced for 2, 3, 4 hours, maybe a couple days on this trick, basically, that you're going to show to the internet, and they're going to watch it for 10 seconds while they're scrolling and go on to the next thing. First, before you practice that stuff, practice things that you're going to use. So if you're a drummer, practice your time. Practice your feel. Practice your groove. Work on just your kick drum, for God's sakes. Like, take everything out and listen to your kick drum and see if it's in time, because it might not be. You might be able to do this cool stick trick thing, but maybe your kick drum isn't in time. So just always be productive in your practice. The other thing is, if you're not feeling something someday, you don't have to practice every day. People tell you, oh, I used to practice 4 hours a day, 8 hours a day. Like, did you really, though? Did you really practice for 4 hours, or were you sitting at your instrument for 4 hours? There's a big difference. If you're not engaged and involved and learning, is it practicing? Here's a question. If it sounds good, are you practicing? I don't think so. I think your practice needs to sound bad for it to be practice. Otherwise, you're jamming with yourself. How's the coffee, by the way? Is it good? So just keep in mind there's so much pressure from musicians in the music world when you're doing music as your career, and pressure from ourselves too. So always keep in mind, music is supposed to be fun, always. Music is always supposed to feel good. I don't care if it's metal or reggae or hip-hop. It's to express emotion, and to feel good. So if that's not happening, ask yourself why. Ask yourself if you're playing the wrong genre. You might be playing the wrong instrument. Who knows? Always make sure that you're enjoying it, because the only way to get really, really, really good is to be playing and practicing with intention and putting joy into everything you do, so that it comes across to your audience, and your audience feels joy or sadness or intensity or energy. So it has to come from you first. So when you're practicing next, make sure that you're doing things musically. Make sure that you're loving everything that you do, and don't burn out. If you don't want to practice, don't practice. Take Sundays off. I haven't practiced on a Sunday or gone to the gym or worked in forever. I know you're gonna say that the church gig, like, do the church gig if you want, but then, like, don't go home and shed for another 4 hours. Just, like, give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack, because the fact of the matter is, the stuff that you're playing at bass level, not like bass, but bass level, is stuff that most people look up at and say, wow, I wish I could do that. Your blues scale that you're so sick of on the bass or on the guitar, a lot of people wish they could play that. And to see even just that played well and played with passion and joy is amazing for them. They love to see that. It makes them happy, and that is the goal. So practice with intention, play with joy, and I'll see you next time.